breaking out the old Slayer hat. That's how you know we're getting real rock tinge, my guy. Hello world of YouTube. Welcome to a brand new discography review. One that was surprisingly voted on in masses on at least YouTube, because I threw this poll up everywhere. It reached a three-way split on Patreon, reached a resounding relative split on Twitter, but to a lesser degree, but a large quantity of you wanted to see me talk about the California skate punk, pop punk, great band, The Offspring, who were a relatively consistent part of my childhood. I listened to some of their earlier work when I was a kid, and they followed me through my my formative years. I listened to a lot of their stuff when I was in like middle school and high school, you know, when I was really a pop punk kid, and I like a handful of their records pretty well enough. They're a band with a unique sound, at least vocally, thanks to Dexter Holland's whine, who takes the snottiness seen in bands like Green Day and ramps it up to 1,000,000. But they weren't without their more socially conscious material, even in their earlier stuff. Today I'm going to be breaking down their 9-record run, ranking their discography, giving you guys a relative roadmap if you would like to get into the band, and basically being the first YouTuber to do like in the music scene, to do a deep dive on this band's catalog. John's reviewed Smash, and they've come up in passing here and there on like Luke's channel and Anthony's channel and John's channel, I'm sure elsewhere, but like no one talks about these guys, and I think they have some classics in their catalog. So I'm gonna talk about the good and the bad, starting with the bad. You know, some of these discography reviews, it's hard to put a record on the bottom, but Splinter is easily The Offspring's weakest record, because not only does it have some pretty subpar drumming, no offense Josh Freese, I love you, but you just don't add the same flavor that founding drummer Ron Welty had. He had this just primal punk energy to his drums that's missing from this project. But not only that, they are, like they were on Conspiracy of One, trying to rewrite Americana, a record that was hugely successful for them, and for good reason. The songs on there are amazing. And while Conspiracy of One had some decent moments amidst its bad ones, the bad moments on here just stand above the good ones. Like, yeah, I like the track of The Noose fine enough. I actually really enjoyed the single Can't Get My Head Around You. I think it's got a nice chorus. It's a moment where Josh's drums don't feel that distractingly different from what the band normally has in their caliber. And Dewey, again, tries to channel old Offspring in a fine enough way. But man, the worst hangover ever fucking hit that. Not good songs. And even the songs where they're trying to channel something, again, Offspring-esque, like Lightning Rod, and Never Gonna Find Me. They're fine enough songs, but you can get much better slices of that type of sound the band explores on other catalogs, both before and after this point. It's just not a good record. It is a record that I only listen to the songs that I enjoy, and I recommend you do the same. This is a record in the discography you don't necessarily need to listen to, but if you do, it's for morbid curiosity. You know, if you look at the Offspring discography, I'd argue this is the first bad, mediocre record in their catalog, because while it has moments of merit, I like Come Out Swingin', I like Damn It I Changed Again, and All Along, fine enough. I think that they're a little derivative at points, but the band is still in tight form because this is the last album with Ron Welty on drums, and his energy, when it's there, is in good prominence. The production isn't as bad. Dexter Holland's whine isn't as obnoxious as it is on Splinter, but the low moments on here are pretty bad. Like Original Prankster, big yikes from me, dude. And Special Delivery, also big yikes from me. But as a whole, this project isn't as bad as Splinter, mostly because of those elements. It's still incredibly derivative. You can tell just by looking at this thing, they were trying to capitalize on Americana sonically by creating something of a similar structure that's just not as refined lyrically. A lot of the moments on here feel lazier. The choruses don't really hit as hard. Living in Chaos's chorus is just not good. I feel like this is only for people who liked Americana. If you like Americana a lot and you want to hear more of that, then listen to Conspiracy of One. I'm sure it has its defenders. I'm just not one of them. I think it's far too lazy to defend, and it's just something that I don't like revisiting personally. I actually listened to this record for the first time in prep for this review. I liked the Offspring, but I fell off of their camp late high school, shortly after Rise and Fall, Rage and Grace came out. Like the year after that, I was like, alright, maybe I'm just done with the Offspring, because I like that record, but it just didn't resonate with me in the same way that their earlier material did. And I thought that was just because, you know, I'm getting old. I'm getting older. I don't need that anymore. But I mean, after revisiting the earlier material for this review and checking this out, I enjoyed myself. It's a solid record. You know, I don't think it would have ended up on my of the year list for 2012, but it's not bad. It's fine. It's better than the stuff they were doing in the early 2000s. You know, the writing is a little more focused. It's a little more harnessed. They have their moments where they get a little cringy and sort of datified, like what Weezer does, like on Cruise in California. But I feel like those moments are less than they were on the other projects. And I don't know, the band just feels like they're performing in a better funnel here. You know, I like tracks like The Future Is Now. I like the title track. I like Turning Into You. I love the writing on Turning Into You. And I feel like they do a good job at harnessing something a little more mature. A little bit. There was a lot of it on Rise and Fall, and I like they kind of pulled it back a little bit and made a more Offspring feeling record with this. It's just a little more mature in its execution. I feel like if you enjoy, you know, Americana and you enjoy albums like Ixnay on the Hombre, you'll enjoy Days Go By. It has moments that are very similar, just in a different fashion. They evolved that sound really well on Days Go By, I think, personally. I think it's a little slept on. It's a little underrated, in my opinion. I actually like this record well enough. I think that its highs are as good on the highs on Ixnay on the Hombre and Smash, but it's clear with this record they were trying to write their own American Idiot, or their own mature 2000s pop-punk record. But I'm using American Idiot as an example because this album, while, again, the Offspring weren't against getting political, they wrote shit about, like, LA cops in their earlier work, but this just feels like they're trying to make their own sort of, again, not high-concept rock opera like American Idiot, but write their own record in the same vein. You know, tracks like Christy, Are You Doing Okay? Stuff Is Mixed Up has the same kind of tongue-in-cheek snarkness that wasn't there on their earlier material in this way. Like, the earlier material gets snarky, but this is just in a very different fashion. And they're also working on making their choruses that much bigger with tracks like You're Gonna Go Far, Kid and Hammerhead. You know, they're working on scale, upping the scale. But I don't think it necessarily falters by any stretch of the imagination. I also think this record is just fine. If you like Green Day, you'll probably like this record more than some of their earlier material, because the snottiness is pulled back just a little bit, because I feel like that would be a turnoff for some people. Dexter Holland's vocals are relatively an acquired taste, and I feel like because there's a hyper focus on serious subject matter or a serious tone, the record, their overall snottiness is pulled back. I love the opener Half Truism. I like You're Gonna Go Far, Kid fine enough. I think it's a nice, inspiring little jam that has a nice drum work on it that's a little more disco flavored in the verses and a little more traveling in the pre-chorus that I think works really well. I think the ballads are where this record falls, personally. I think Chrissy, Are You Doing Okay is alright, I guess. Again, it's them trying to write a Green Day ballad that I don't think works for them. And I don't like the electronics on A Lot Like Me. I think that it's a moment where the record kind of offshoots into a territory it doesn't necessarily need to go in. If you like 2000s pop punk that's a little more serious, like if you like, I don't want to say bands like Rise Against or Against Me, because those bands are a lot more serious than The Offspring. But again, this feels like they're trying to write a record in that vein, and I respect the effort. This is also the first record to feature Pete Prada on drums, and I feel like his drums land a lot better than Josh Freese's does. He does a good job at bringing them into a different realm of punk gracefully. I just think that it's hard to beat what Ron Welty was doing on the earlier material, man. This record's good. I do really enjoy it. I look back on it with fond memories, because this is the last Offspring record I listened to when it came out, before I tried to like flourish out into even more weird territories. But I think this is good. I think this is fine. While I've harped on their worst records at trying to recreate Americana, Americana itself is trying to expand upon Ixnay on the Hombre. And I feel like they did it all right on Americana. There's people that really don't like the lows of this record, and I get it. I understand why people may not like Pretty Fly for a White Guy, or Why Don't You Get a Job, or Pay the Man, or Walla Walla, because they're a little goofy. Walla Walla has at least more of a punkier instrumentation, but I get why you may be turned away from that. But I mean, have you ever? Kids Aren't Alright. She's Got Issues. Great punk jams. Super good punk jams. And they do a good job at melding those not so serious moments with those serious moments beautifully. This set an archetype for them. I mean, it was a very successful record. And I personally, I don't hate Pretty Fly for a White Guy, nor do I hate Why Don't You Get a Job or Pay the Man. But that's totally from a nostalgic perspective, and I'm well okay to admit that. Are they classically written, high-concept songs? Fuck no. Are they punk classics? Fuck no. But hey, I get nostalgic for shit like that sometimes. Again, this record was a seminal part of my childhood. My mom's boyfriend wanted to be The Offspring so bad. I get nostalgic for this record. It's a record that I can have fun with listening to. It's a great expansion on a really good punk record. You know, there's a reason why it's not higher, because I think they've done better, but I respect the effort. And I feel like if you like Ixnay on the Hombre, you may not hate this record, but if you want punk that's a little cleaner than their earlier stuff, because their earlier stuff has that kind of traditional punk production, and again, that can turn people away. If you like bands like Blink-182 and you've never listened to The Offspring, listen to Americana, because it's tongue-in-cheek, it's snotty, and it's fun, and I think you'll like it. Don't let its middle-of-the-road placement fool you. I think that their debut self-titled release is a pretty solid-ass old-school sounding punk record. Old school in a lot of ways that the rest of their catalog does not have, and it feels very interesting to hear the band like this sound like this on a lot of this record, because there's songs that sound like, you know, The Offspring. There's songs that sound like and have elements that they would incorporate in their music in the coming releases, like Tehran or Blackball, or parts of tracks like Demons and Jennifer Lost the War. But even those tracks have elements that sound very vintage punk, 80s punk, in a way that The Offspring don't really sound on the rest of their catalog. And that makes it an incredibly different release. You can tell that these guys were influenced by other California punk bands like the Dead Kennedys, especially with some of the writing on tracks like Kill the President, and again on Jennifer Lost the War. It has a sort of writing that feels like something else. But if you're a fan of old school punk and you've kind of written off The Offspring as 90s pop punk, you know, garbage, listen to their debut. It's a lot fresher than you may realize. and you may get some enjoyment out of it. I like it. I think its playing is a little too rough, and they refine it a lot more in the subsequent releases that make it a good, important piece of their discography and a good entry point for certain people, but I don't think personally it's the best entry point for the band. If you like their later material like Ixnay on the Hombre or Ignition or Smash and you want to hear their punkier side in a more raw aesthetic, listen to their debut. It's pretty solid. But like I said, they just refine some of the rough edges around their debut a little more on Ignition. And I feel like even if you like, again, traditional sounding punk and you may have skipped over the Offspring, listen to Ignition, especially if you like the debut and you wouldn't mind it refined a little bit, tightened a little bit more in some of the playing. It's less sloppy on Ignition. The production is beefed up a little bit without sounding too pristine. You may like Ignition, or if you like a lot of modern pop punk, like bands like Neck Deep or Knuckle Puck, and you want to hear something a little old school that isn't necessarily completely hardcore punk, listen to Ignition. It's got a great old school sound. There's some tracks on here like Dirty Magic that sound super fucking 90s in a way that like reminds me of more old Nirvana than it does what the Offspring would become. It has tracks that sound very indebted to their sound, like We Are One, which is an incredible fucking song that has a great refrain. LAPD, No Hero, and Burn It Up also kind of sound like the Offspring in their own sort of earlier Genesis sort of way. Again, this just kind of takes the elements that worked from their debut and fleshes them out a little more in this follow-up. I still think it's a great step up and a great fucking punk record. I feel like Kick Him When He's Down, another incredibly tight, catchy punk song that has a lot more edge to it than a lot of stuff that was that would come to be as the decade went on. A really solid release. I feel like if you, again, like their Ixnay on the Hombre, Smash era stuff, or even if you like Americana and you want to see a little bit more of an edgier Offspring, this is a good next place to go. And again, if you like the edgier stuff on their self-titled, but you maybe want it a little more refined, check out Ignition. It's a good bridge record. It's a good record to get to after maybe sampling the band a little bit. You want to get something a little more raw or a little more refined if you, again, came from the debut. Really solid-ass release. Okay. Yeah! I love Ixnay on the Hombre because it took, again, some of the laid-back atmospheres from Smash, beefed up the production a little bit, made it a little more tongue-in-cheek. You got Jello Biafra in the beginning. You got tracks like Mota here. You got all the crazy Taxi classics like All I Want. It is some cut the shit, poppier centric punk tracks, and it is the apex of that. I like Ignition. I think Ignition is a truly great record. Their first really great record. But man, Ixnay on the Hombre is just that. It's still miles better. I like it. I like how tight it is. I like how everything is just so cut and precise. It is well executed. Pop punk with a skatier edge. It's great. The choruses are good. The rafters shaking is there. You can see it. You can see where they built themselves up to be a much bigger sounding band on here without going too far overboard. It is great. And again, they took some of the softer elements from Smash and didn't lose them, like on Gone Away, which is a great ballad that would be ruined as the years went on by a certain band who I'm not going to get into. But Gone Away is a cool-ass jam that pulls back things, pulls the pace back without completely burying the album. Truly, alternative rock, skate punk, excellence in its peak. I feel like if you liked Smash, because spoilers, I think Smash is the best entry point to get into this band, and you want to see it ramped up a little bit production-wise and see where they would lay the groundwork for a lot of their career for the rest of the 90s, check out Ixnay on the Hombre. I think it's a little slept on, personally. I think it's a great fucking record, and I feel like if you want something that's a little more cut the BS punk, that isn't necessarily too serious, you can't go wrong with this record. Smash was an essential part of my upbringing because I listened to the singles a lot growing up. Self-Esteem, Come Out and Play. Some of the deeper cuts like Nitro and What Happened to You were also part of my childhood. When I was sitting down with this record and preparing for this discography review, it was like cracking open an old yearbook and just reminiscing, you know, mentally. A lot of the sounds on here, the guitars are crunch in the right way. You know, the drums are produced so perfectly. You know, there's a lot of fun moments on here that, again, they kind of ramped up to infinity on the following record, but are a nice, you know, subdued genesis here. I feel like this is the ultimate gateway record for the Offspring.
Like, the most jokey or buoyant the band gets on here is on Come Out and Play and What Happened to You. And What Happened to You is a fun fucking ska tune, so of course I fucking love that. It's got the Offspring doing ska. That's just the most California you can get without going to listen to Sublime.
Absurd. It's got some laid back without getting too absurd. It's got, again, some youthful energy and bite to it, literally in the form of youth energy. It's got good choruses. It's got some snotty punk attitude, like on Bad Habit and Killboy Powerhead. It's a good-ass album with some good hooks that isn't afraid to get catchy when it wants to be. It is the true bridge, like Dookie, a true bridge of pop-centric writing and punk energy in a harmonious marriage. I love this record. I think it's an essential piece of contemporary punk music. It's one of the most important punk records of the 90s, if you ask me. It's a great fucking release. I mean, obviously, it's also super successful for the band and opened up the doors for them to make records like Ixnay and Hombre and Americana. But I feel like it is still an important piece of 90s punk, if you ask me. It's got the right amount of attitude, it's got the right production, it's got the right kick to it that I feel like if you like this type of music, you need to listen to. You'll be surprised what rippling effects it has had on punk and its sound and its writing. It is essential, if you ask me. That's my Offspring discography review. What did you think about it? Did you like it? Were you surprised at how much I like a handful of these records? Let me know in those comments down below. Next month, I will be throwing up another poll on everywhere, my Patreon, which I try to consider more often than not than anything else. But my Patreon, my Twitter, my YouTube. Be staying tuned for that. If you enjoyed this review, be sure to give it a like. If you want to see more of my music, gaming, and general notary content, be sure to subscribe. Special thanks to my patrons. If you would like to join their ranks, get early access to content and exclusive content like another reformatted discography review, which just went live today on Slipknot. If you want to see that and my System of a Down reformatted discography review before they hit the channel in the coming months, check it out in the description down below. I'm going to get out of here. Thank you again so very much for watching. I've been Valor Rack. You guys have good days, lives, and situations, and I'll see you another day.